the Academy is not supposed to make decisions on the Best Picture based on monetary concerns. In Tom's view, he didn't think about anything else about Roma or Green Book or what's the Queen movie?
The Favorite, which was not the favorite.
Which was great. You weren't making any comments about any of that. They're not going to give it to Netflix because they're not a member of the club yet. That's what you said. And
I did. I think all voters vote their economic interests. It's not too different from centrist Democrats looking at Howard Schultz and saying we're not going to vote for the decline of our own party. I think ultimately people will come to determine that Netflix has their economic interest at stake, but the Academy was not quite ready to make that statement.
But it's a bigger point, isn't it? That Netflix is the outsider, but they're kicking.
But not really so much of an outsider anymore.
Yeah.
Netflix has definitely impacted the industry, and so much of what we're going to see next from Disney as it integrates Fox is going to be about taking on Netflix. And though these services are going to be very different, you know, Disney is launching Disney Plus, which is going to launch later this year, which is going to be the Disney branded service. But that's going to integrate some of the Fox assets, such as National Geographic. And then they're also going to be investing more in Hulu, which now they will own a majority stake of as of midnight tonight. So we're really seeing the pressure from Netflix on the traditional media giants, and that's one reason Disney is putting so much of a focus on the direct-to-consumer play.
The look-backs on Rupert are being written that he's out of Hollywood now, and what a career. You've seen those, I guess, huh, at this point?
Yeah, but you got to give it to him. It was one hell of a deal, and they sure as hell got it through a hell of a lot faster than AT&T Time Warner. I think there are a lot of questions around this. I mean, Julia's absolutely right. Netflix has moved into Hollywood and is there to stay. I'm not sure the comparison for Disney chasing Netflix is where they want to have that narrative, though. You know,
why? Just because it's so tough to do?
I think Netflix is so out far ahead of everybody else. Disney Plus hasn't even started, and Netflix by the end of this year will have 175 million subscribers on its way to 300 million probably in the next 4 or 5 years. And what Disney gets with this Fox deal is enormous concentration of the movie studio business. At least 40% market share. Many believe it will have 50 to 60% market share in studios.
Wow.
That leverage over the movie theaters is going to be enormous. Disney is going to be the player to dictate terms there. And the issue is, are they going to look to optimize the studio theatrical released process, which has this whole windowing thing of it taking 9 months before a major motion picture makes its way to HBO? Or are they going to use that leverage to really get some strength behind their new streaming service and do some of the things Netflix are doing, like releasing to the service when they release to the theater window? And it doesn't seem like they're going to do that.
I would guess the former, not the latter.
But I think
that's what it looks like.
Both. They can actually do both, and we're already starting to see them do both. They already have so much content, so many movies. They're unlikely to probably want to have 60% of the theatrical box office, so they're going to take some of these movies that were intended for theatrical release, and they're going to put them exclusively on Disney Plus. For instance, there was a remake of that old Lady and the Tramp movie, the animated movie. They're making that movie, and they were originally intending to release that in theaters, but now they're going to have so much inventory, they're going to put that.
I was going to say, they're knocking out things a lot more quickly, too. I was walking through a theater the other day and looking at all the upcoming remakes of different ones that are coming from Dumbo and all down the line, and it's like every month there's a new movie.
They have a lot of movies coming out, and then if you look at Fox, Fox, you know, used to release between 12 and 20 movies a year. They're unlikely to be releasing that many, but if you just look at the sort of sheer quantity of films they're going to have access to, they will be able to put a lot of those direct to streaming on ESPN Plus. I'm sorry, on Disney Plus, and that makes Disney Plus more appealing. And I would also say don't overlook ESPN Plus, which has only been in the market for a year, but has gained surprising traction considering the kind of content they have.
Well, I think to the extent they put more original movies on their streaming service right away, the better the streaming service will do. But the issue is Netflix. People don't go there for the Disney movies that Netflix already has, like Avengers: Infinity Wars. You don't hear anybody saying that's why I go to Netflix. Most of the top Netflix views are their original programs. And the issue really is Disney going to make the kind of commitment to producing that kind of quantity of original programming that Netflix has? And without that, it's going to be a tougher haul.
You're leaving out the biggest remake that I read about yesterday. Pet Sematary. Stephen King. Supposedly, it's much more horrifying than the original. Do you remember the original?
I have never seen it.
Come on!
It was awful.
I've never seen it.
What do you mean it was
It
awful?
was terrifying.
This is supposedly 10 times more terrifying. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's a universal, but just in case it is, I thought I'd mention it. Anyway, we also want to get your takes, Tom, on this story. Republican Congressman Devin Nunes suing Twitter and 3 of its users for $250 million in damages, alleging that he was defamed and that the social media company engages in the shadow banning of conservative opinions and selectively enforces its own terms of service to benefit opponents of the Republican Party. No merit to that? Or?
I don't think a first-year law student would have a tough time defending this as a defamation suit. He's a public official. A lot of insulation against defamation-type suits for that. Twitter, because of the Communications Decency Act, actually has a safe harbor like the other social media companies do, where they're not held responsible for the underlying content. This reminds me of when I was on Capitol Hill and there was a survey of who was the stupidest senators, and the one that was viewed as stupidest by the staff held a press conference to claim that he was not the stupidest senator. This is going to send all these
dumber than I am.
This is going to send so many more people to the mock sites, that the Twitter feeds that go after Devin Nunes. I think all it's going to do is get him a lot more humor aimed in his direction.
Who's the senator who held that press conference?
I believe it was Senator Byrd from Virginia, not the longtime leaders from West Virginia, Senator Byrd.
The greatest line was Cuomo's line, where she said, you know, you got to stop lying to the voters. And he goes, you first.
This is not the first time that this has been raised as an issue. And Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, was testifying on Capitol Hill last year, and he was pressed on this issue of whether or not there was bias and whether they were sort of restricting the reach of Republican congressmen on Twitter. And they said they did a survey, and there is no difference in the reach between Republicans and Democrats. But this question of shadow banning, which is really basically whether if you type in someone's name, if it automatically populates, whether they were restricting searches, it's sort of a complicated one. And at the end of the day, if they say there's no difference, but it does seem like he is drawing attention to these Twitter handles that are mocking him, because they've gained a lot more followers just in the day since this has come out.
Twitter's amazing. I mean, it is. And if you get 100 comments, you feel inundated, and you're really talking about 100 comments. I mean, if you're you walk through a football game with 70,000 people, it's pretty easy to find 100 people that love you and 100 people that hate you. And when you're talking about absolute, millions of people. So, I mean, but in fairness, they asked Zuckerberg, it seems like a lot of your employees are liberal. And he goes, we can't find a conservative anywhere in the entire area to bring in here to Facebook. So, I mean, and that's the way it is with most of those
If they
companies.
really want to go with the social media platforms, it's unlikely to be based on antitrust action, and it's unlikely to be on data privacy. The place they could really hurt them is if they pull this safe harbor and start making social media companies responsible for the underlying content on them, and the amount of regulatory protections they'd have to build in and the cost associated with all that filtering would be enormous. I doubt that's going to happen, but that would be the real Achilles heel if you really wanted to go with the social media companies with government action.
Are you willing to say Comcast is in a better position than Disney to go into this future? Or, I mean, you are?
Well, I have no doubt Comcast is going to build a streaming service that will get a lot more subscribers faster, because it's free, and all you have to do is authenticate that you're a cable subscriber. And I think it's a very smart way to get out of the gate fast. Look, Hulu, which is going to be Disney's primary adult-oriented service, is going to be 40% owned by Comcast and AT&T, maybe all 40% owned by Comcast with the rights they have. That's an underreported story. I don't know what Disney does with its biggest competitor sitting there owning 40% of the service. Nobody's really talked about what governance rights come with that. That is a huge inhibition on the growth of what is going to be your primary streaming vehicle to transform your company. I don't really understand how that is going to be worked through by Disney, and nobody's really talking much about that.
Okay, we'll have you back about your Oscar pick for next year, too. Anyway, and your Final Four pick, you can tell us now if you want. Who takes it all? No, we got to go.
My daughter-in-law is a former Duke athlete. I am with Duke all the way, or I'm out of the family.
Not a bad pick.